Unlock a grandfather's hidden legacy and embrace redemption. The brittle morning air held a sharpness that bit at exposed skin as guests gathered beneath the stoic white pillars of the small-town church. The overcast sky stretched endlessly, a dull gray ceiling pressing down on the gathered faces, each shadowed with sorrow and silent judgment. Sarah stood near the back, her hands clutching a crumpled handkerchief, the soft fabric a poor shield against the cold sting in her eyes. Her husband's coffin rested ahead, polished mahogany stark against the pale tiles, a wreath of white lilies draped over its center. The scent of fading flowers and worn pine filled the space, mixing with muffled sniffles and the low hum of whispered prayers. Yet despite the shared grief, Sarah was alone, visibly apart from the cluster of somber figures gathered closer to the front. Her in-laws, arrayed in their rigid black suits and formal gowns, spoke in measured tones, their laughter before the funeral still echoing in Sarah's mind like distant thunder. Eyes that once greeted her met now only with thinly veiled coldness and the weight of unspoken blame. The room's soft light caught the anxious twist of her brow, the dirt smudges on her flannel sleeves, and the uncombed fall of brown hair tied loosely in a messy bun. A pair of women near the pews shot quick, pointed glances her way, whispers brushing the air unseen but felt. Sarah's gaze dropped, heavy with shame, the deep blue of her eyes flickering with flickers of hurt. Her breath came in shallow, unsteady pulls as the priest's voice recited prayers. "Great is the mystery of faith," the priest intoned, voice steady but distant. Sarah's thoughts spiraled into darker corners, fragments of conversations past, accusations hidden beneath polite smiles, and the gnawing suspicion that her late husband's secrets shadowed her like a looming storm. The press of grief was unbearable, yet so was the isolation inflicted by those who should have stood beside her. Someone shifted beside her. An older man, his face creased like weathered bark, gave a curt nod, eyes briefly meeting hers with a flicker of pity or perhaps warning. Sarah forced herself to nod in return, swallowing the bitter taste of rejection. Outside, the wind murmured across endless fields, rustling dry stalks that stretched toward the horizon beneath an eerie sky, muted earth tones blurring the line between land and cloud. The silence outside contrasted sharply with the stifling atmosphere inside. A piercing sound broke the fragile quiet, the sharp ring of a phone vibrating insistently in her handbag. Her fingers trembled as she reached for it, reluctant yet compelled by the urgency. The screen displayed an unfamiliar number. "Hello?" Her voice was strained, the sound weaker than she expected. "Sarah, it's about the farm," a deep voice spoke hurriedly on the other end. "Your grandfather left it to you. You inherited the old place." The words hung suspended amid the somber din of the funeral. Her heart caught a sudden rupture of the grief cloud. She swallowed hard, blinking away tears welling with confusion and a flicker of something unforeseen, hope, perhaps, or escape. The camera pulled tight on her face, eyes wide, lips trembling, chest rising and falling in slow, uncertain gasps. The world around her faded, the murmuring prayers, the judgmental stares replaced by the cold, expansive promise of a hidden legacy waiting in the distant fields beyond. The heavy silence settled again, thick and enigmatic. A weathered scarecrow whispered faintly in the shifting breeze outside the church window, its tattered frame a silent sentinel to forgotten secrets. Sarah's gaze lifted, blue eyes shimmering with fragile resolve veiled beneath layers of sorrow, as the scene held on the delicate balance between despair and the unknown path ahead. The church emptied slowly, the hushed shuffle of footsteps echoing down the stone path. Sarah lingered near the doorway, the cold bite of late morning creeping under the collar of her flannel shirt, the stiff fabric a mute reminder of the distance between her and the world she used to know. The day stretched endlessly, a canopy of pale gray clouds hanging low, pressing down on the endless fields beyond the village, blurring the horizon into a muted watercolor wash. She stood apart from those who had gathered, the place emptying of comfort and filling with a hollow ache. Family members clustered quietly, exchanging forced smiles and sidelong glances that carried unspoken judgments. Their eyes flicked past her, veiled with the residue of fractured trust and simmering blame rooted in secrets no one dared speak aloud. Her fingers clenched briefly, the sensation sharp beneath her skin. The weight of unresolved grief mingled with the cold sting of rejection, frothing in restless thoughts. Sarah's breath misted faintly in the chill as she wrapped her arms around herself, seeking warmth not only from the fading winter air but from a deeper, intangible loss. Memories of whispered accusations tangled with the pain of sudden loneliness, dreams unraveled in silence as familiar faces turned away. She felt the sharp divide between belonging and exile, love and suspicion, closure slipping through her trembling hands. The fields outside beckoned with a desolate calm, whispering stories of endless skies and forgotten earth. The dry, cracked soil held echoes of her grandfather's generations, yet now it seemed untouched by the promise of renewal, just like Sarah's own fractured heart. Her footsteps carried her away from the gathering, along a narrow dirt road lined with skeletal trees, their branches clawing toward the sky. She moved slowly, a fragile figure swallowed by an expansive, empty landscape, the muted colors of earth and sky reflecting the quiet despair threading through her soul. A far-off crow cried, breaking the fragile stillness, its lonely call rippling through the open air like a somber psalm. Sarah paused, eyes drawn upward to the weathered scarecrow standing sentinel in a distant field, its tattered clothes fluttering weakly in the wind. It was a silent guardian, abandoned yet unyielding, much like herself, though even that stoic symbol seemed tossed aside by the years. The weight of solitude pushed her forward, each step heavy with doubt. Could she truly start again here, amid shadows and ghosts not yet laid to rest? The future felt like a fragile thread, ready to snap, leaving her dangling between the past she fled and the unknown stretching endlessly before her. Her thoughts throbbed with whispered questions, unanswered and piercing. Was forgiveness possible? Was connection beyond grief within reach? Could the untold stories hidden in her grandfather's old farm somehow mend the rift that had fractured her world? Turning a bend in the road, Sarah spotted the rusted roofline of a distant barn, its skeletal framework silhouetted against the gray sky. It was a relic, a monument to neglect and lost time, a mirror to her own suspended existence. For a moment, the breeze carried a faint scent of earth and rain, stirring something fragile in her heart. It was but a whisper, a quiet hope that beneath the decay lay seeds waiting to bloom. Her eyes, deep and radiant despite the shadows, softened. The invisible thread of resilience that had lain dormant begun to pulse, a flicker of light amid the gathering dusk. Sarah fell silent, the vast field stretching endlessly before her, the quiet promise of untold stories teasing the edges of her resolve. The evening sun sagged low over the endless fields, painting the desolate farmstead in shades of amber and shadow, a fading world suspended between light and dark. Sarah's footsteps crunched softly against the gravel path leading to the weathered farmhouse, its peeling paint and sagging porch a stubborn monument to years left unattended. The tired wind whispered through ragged branches, carrying scents of damp earth and dry hay, a mixture both foreign and deeply familiar. Inside, the air was thick with the musty smell of neglected tapestry woven with dust motes dancing lazily in the slanting light from grimy windows. The silence felt heavy, filled with unspoken histories pressing against the walls. As Sarah crossed the threshold, the weight of the house's past settled like a shroud across her shoulders. Her fingers trailed along the worn wood of the hallway, fingertips brushing centuries of forgotten stories. The house seemed almost to breathe beneath her touch, creaking softly as if the very frame sighed under the burden of secrets kept too long. Dust clung to her sleeves, dancing in the golden beams, a reminder of time's persistence. Drawn by a quiet urgency, she ascended the narrow staircase, each step groaning beneath tentative weight. The walls were lined with faded photographs, faces blurred by age and weathering that stared silently, bearing witness to joys and sorrows long since faded. Sarah paused, her deep blue eyes reflecting the flicker of flickering candlelight from an adjacent room. There, half hidden beneath a heap of yellowed papers and frayed fabric, lay an old leather-bound journal. Its surface was cracked and worn, the spine bent as if burdened by the weight of the stories within. Heart pounding with fragile hope, Sarah reached forward, fingers trembling, and opened it slowly. The first page revealed a carefully penned note in faded ink, a whisper from the past. To those who seek truth beneath the soil and stars, know that the roots run deeper than you see. A chill rippled through her, an invisible current resonating with the scarecrow she had glimpsed earlier standing lonely among the wilting fields, a silent guardian, watching over memories both protective and burdensome. The journal's pages were filled with cryptic entries, sketches of the land, and names and dates that wove a tapestry far richer and darker than she could have imagined. Sarah turned pages slowly, each word a thread drawing her deeper down into the labyrinth of her grandfather's hidden life of choices made, mistakes buried, and a legacy tangled in secrets that stretched across generations. As dusk bled through the windows, the journal's shadow seemed to flicker alive, mirroring the trembling ember of resolve that blossomed in her chest. Alone in the dim room, Sarah felt the burdens of grief begin to shift, mingling now with a fierce curiosity and a tremulous determination. The farmhouse, the barn, the scarecrow, their silence was no longer empty but charged with possibility, a pathway forward through darkness. Outside, night wrapped the farm in a deep indigo quilt studded with stars, the cold air settling but carrying with it a hint of promise. The wind teased the edge of the scarecrow's tattered hat, sending a shiver that coursed through the stillness like a secret given a voice. Sarah closed the journal gently, eyes lifted to meet the horizon where land and sky touched in quiet accord. Her breath came steady now, the fragile threads of pain weaving into a nascent hope. The first step had been not toward closure, but toward understanding, toward unearthing the fragile truths buried beneath generations of silence. Her gaze lingered on the shadowed silhouette of the barn outside, standing stoic against the night, and for the first time, she saw it not as a relic of neglect but a silent witness awaiting reckoning. In that suspended moment beneath the endless sky, Sarah was neither lost nor defeated but poised on the brink of discovery, her journey just beginning as the soft night wind carried the faintest echo of whispered possibilities. A pale dawn filtered through the cracked window panes of the farmhouse, casting long, gentle shadows over the dust-laden floor. Sarah stood in the heart of the old home, the creaks and soft groans of settling wood echoing quietly around her, a living heartbeat beneath the stillness. The faded wallpaper peeled in curling strips, infusing the dim room with a sense of age worn thin. Outside, the endless fields stretched under a sky heavy with the aftermath of rain, earth wet and centric, alive with possibility yet laced with the chill of lingering sorrow. Her hands were stained with the grime of years, remnants of neglect and forgotten labor as she knelt beside a rusted tractor tire, prying loose clumps of dirt from tired machinery. The cold touch of metal was familiar but foreign, a long-dormant link binding her to the forgotten life of the farm, binding her also to the grandfather she had never truly known. In the kitchen, a beam of morning light slipped through cracked curtains, catching dust motes in slow motion, a hazy ballet that held her attention. She moved with purposeful slowness, each motion a tentative step back from the crushing weight of loss and rejection. Outside, a crow's harsh call fractured the quiet, a plaintive note that stirred something buried deep inside her. She dragged a battered wooden chair closer to the dusty stone hearth, where ashes lay cold and untouched. Her breath fogged the air as she sank into the seat, the worn grain rough beneath her fingers. The house groaned like a shuttered giant awakening, secrets waiting beneath the surface, hesitant but undeniable. A floorboard creaked unexpectedly underfoot, and Sarah's pulse quickened, eyes scanning the room as if expecting ghosts to emerge from the shadows. But it was only the wind moving through a broken windowpane, carrying in the scent of earth and dried grass, the paradox of decay and life. At the edge of the room, stacked precariously beneath a stained tarp, lay a weathered trunk bound by rusted iron clasps and the dust of decades. Hands trembling slightly, Sarah pulled back the cloth, the scent of aged leather and mildew rising like an exhalation from the past. She lifted the lid slowly. Inside, nestled amid yellowing bundles of letters, faded photographs, and brittle newspaper clippings, lay the old journalit's spine cracked and fragile. The leather cover bore the imprint of a compass rose, worn soft with time. Sarah hesitated, fingers brushing the surface gently before drawing it out, cradling it like a fragile relic. She opened the journal with reverence, the pages crackling softly, ink faded but legible. The handwriting was meticulous, her grandfather's voice in loops and flourishes, revealing fragments of a life intertwined with the very soil she stood upon. Entries spoke of hope and hardship, of quiet struggles and missed chances, and of a legacy shadowed by regret. Sarah's eyes flickered with the faintest spark of wonder amidst the growing sorrow. The journal was more than a book. It was a map to forgotten truths and the emotional keys to a family fractured by silence and pain. Outside, dark clouds gathered, the wind picking up, setting the old scarecrow to stir in the corner of the field. Its tattered arms reached upward, a sentinel battered by storm and time, but Unboeta's symbol both fragile and fierce. The rhythmic ticking of an old clock, somewhere unseen in the depths of the farmhouse, punctuated the room's stillness as Sarah read on, drawn deeper into the hidden whispers of the past. Her breath caught on a name, a date, a confession that hinted at secrets long buried, waiting now to surface. The distant rumble of thunder mirrored the storm inside her, tension coiled beneath the surface, a mixture of fear and fascination. Each revelation in the journal chipped away at her walls, stirring conflicts of loyalty and questions of identity. Yet, amid the turbulent shadows, a delicate thread of hope wove through her, fragile but persistent, urging her toward understanding, toward connection, and perhaps, toward healing. Sarah closed the journal gently, setting it down beside a flickering candle whose flame wavered in the draft. The dance of light and shadow on the walls seemed alive, echoing the silent promise and danger held in that old, leather-bound book. She stood slowly, eyes drawn to the window where the first raindrops began to fall cold, heavy beads tracing forgotten paths down the glass. The thunder rolled on, distant but growing closer. In that moment, Sarah felt the past lean toward her, heavy with questions. The farm waited, a silent companion in the endless fields, while the sky cracked open above, ushering her into the storm of secrets just beginning to unfold. The sun dipped low, casting a restless orange glow over the fading fields that whispered around the old farmstead. Shadows stretched, long and chilling, crawling through the abandoned barn's splintered boards and over the twisted metal of neglected tools. Sarah stood just beyond the threshold, her silhouette wavering in the soft light like a ghost tethered between past and present, memory and discovery. The journal lay open on an ancient wooden table she'd uncovered in the farmhouse, its fragile pages fluttering softly in the breeze creeping through the cracked window. Words sprawled across the paper, the faded ink revealing the fragmented truths and silences that had clothed her grandfather's history for decades. Yet as the depth of those secrets became clearer, so too did a shadow lengthen across Sarah's spirit. That evening, at the local general store, the eyes of the townsfolk followed her closely. The murmurs floated on the heavy air, quick and sharp as the rustle of dried leaves stirred by an untamed wind. Whispers slithered around encounters, words laced with suspicion rather than welcome. "You don't know the whole story," muttered a weathered man leaning against the counter, his voice edged with regret and caution. "Best be careful who you trust out here. Not all family stories are fit to be uncovered." Sarah's blue eyes met his with a flash equal parts defiance and fragile hope. "I need to know," she said softly, voice barely carrying past the thick fragrance of pine and dust. The man nodded slowly, his gaze drifting to the shadows beyond the shop's open door, where the scarecrow stood motionless against the twilight sky. Back on the farm, tension rippled through the air like a tightening coil. Village rumors began to intertwine with subtle signs: a door left ajar, a broken fence post, the distant sound of whispered voices beneath the vacant barn's eaves. The legacy of her grandfather, once a difficult mystery lurking in the journal's pages, now uncovered itself in careless acts of warning and veiled threats. Inside the farmhouse, the flickering candlelight cast moving silhouettes on the walls, sketching shapes of doubt and determination across Sarah's composed face. Her fingers trembled as she regarded the journal once more, now a double-edged talisman bridging the gulf between revelation and risk. She was caught in a fragile embrace between the allure of truth and the protective instinct that begged her to stop unearthing what might destroy fragile peace. One night, a sudden noise outside shattered the solitude, a soft, deliberate shuffling near the barn. Heart pounding, Sarah grabbed a weathered flashlight, its beam cutting jagged paths through the gathering darkness. She moved cautiously, shadows clutching at her ankles as the wind whispered through the rusting farm machinery. Near the barn, a figure emerged briefly from the gloom, a silhouette cloaked in mystery and old grievances. The stranger's eyes reflected flickering torchlight, unwavering yet unreadable. "You're digging where you shouldn't." The voice was a low warning, edged with resentment. Sarah stood firm, the journal clutched tightly in one hand, the other steady by her side. "I'm not afraid to know the truth." The figure paused, then receded silently into the night, leaving Sarah bathed in the silver glow of the moonal, but unbroken. The scarecrow, weathered and tattered, remained motionless, its crooked smile a bitter sentinel bearing silent witness to the fragile war unfolding beneath the endless sky. As dawn approached, Sarah returned to the farmhouse, wrestling with truths unveiled and the stark realization that the path to healing might lead through pain deeper than she had imagined. The journal beckoned once more, a promise and a warning etched in every letter, every faded line. In the quiet aftermath, beneath a sky streaked with storm-touched blue, the old farm held its breath, as Sarah wrestled with the shadows of legacy, love, and the relentless yearning for redemption. The twilight thickened over the old farmstead, the sky folding into a canvas of bruised purples and deepening blues. The farmhouse windows, mottled with dust and age, caught the fading light, casting cage-like shadows across the worn wooden floors. Inside, Sarah sat alone in the dim study, the air heavy with the scent of faded paper and forgotten memories. The worn journal lay open before her, pages fluttering faintly in the cool draft slipping through a cracked window. Her eyes traced the carefully penned words, each line revealing layers of her grandfather's life, a mosaic of hopes tangled with decisions that whispered secrets long buried. The ink blurred in places where tears might have fallen, and drawings of fields and towns were scrawled around the margins, echoing the landscape that surrounded her so completely. Outside, the contours of the abandoned barn loomed, a skeletal structure silhouetted against the darkening sky. Its empty frame creaked in the restless wind, a sentinel to the farm's neglected history and the fractured legacy Sarah was only beginning to comprehend. A sudden knock on the front door shattered the fragile stillness. Sarah stood, heart quickening, as a figure stepped onto the porch, a stranger wrapped in the dusk's shadows. His features were sharp and worn, eyes reflecting the weight of unspoken stories. "I know your grandfather," the man said quietly, his voice a thread pulled tight with emotion. "There are things you need to understand. Things that have been kept from you." Sarah's breath caught, the fragile hope clashing with a surge of apprehension. She motioned him inside, their simultaneous steps echoing, but the stranger's presence was both a promise and a threat. As night deepened, his words spilled forth, tales of town disputes and hidden alliances, mistakes that fractured the fabric of the family and the community. The journal's warnings turned tangible, the past bleeding into the present with heavy consequence. Sarah listened, anger and sorrow mingling in her gaze. The weathered scarecrow outside seemed to lean with the weight of revelation, its tattered arms reaching not in protection but in silent accusation, an emblem of heritage unacknowledged, of mistakes concealed beneath layers of dust and silence. Later, as the stranger departed, Sarah moved toward the barn. The moonlight unveiled a startling discovery, a portrait torn in two, the canvas frayed and stained, the faces split apart like a fractured mirror reflecting a broken legacy. Kneeling, she touched the torn edges, the weight of betrayal settling like a stone in her gut. The family she had longed to embrace now felt distant and unknowable, a maze of shadows and half-truths. The journal's words echoed in her mind: redemption through truth, but only if the darkness dared to be faced. Sarah's eyes, deep and steady, lifted to the endless indigo above, the stars faint but resolute. Despite the painful fissures, a delicate thread of resilience tugged at her heart, a reminder that even shattered roots could birth new growth. As the wind whispered through the barren fields and the scarecrow stood silent guard, Sarah understood that the path ahead would be steep and fraught with losses, but also with a fragile, unyielding hope. The night held its breath, the story poised on the cusp of revelation, as Sarah faced truths that would transform not only her understanding of family but her own place within it. The sky hung heavy, a thick blanket of unyielding gray that pressed down on the farm and the woman who stood beneath it, trembling in the cold wind. Rain, thin and relentless, seeped through her worn jacket, soaking into her skin like the crushing weight of grief that refused to ease. The barn loomed behind her, a hollow skeleton of its former self, its doors hanging ajar as though inviting her into a darkness she feared yet could not escape. Inside the farmhouse, the shadows deepened, swallowing corners and memories alike. The flickering candlelight cast long, wavering silhouettes on the walls, dancing in silence with the ghosts of the past. Sarah sat at the faded kitchen table, her fingers tracing the worn leather binding of the journal, now a burden heavier than before. Her eyes, once vibrant with garden blue fire, were dulled, haunted by questions she could not answer. The truth she had hoped to unearth revealed itself as a labyrinth of betrayal and broken bonds, a legacy marred not only by her grandfather's concealed past but by the fractures it left in the present. Unrelenting bitterness curled like smoke through the halls of her Minda, relentless echo of whispered accusations and half-truths. Faces of relatives morphed into shadows, their judgments sharp and unyielding. Each muted expression, every clenched jaw she witnessed at the funeral now played like a haunting refrain. Sarah felt utterly alone, a stranger expelled from a home she never truly inhabited. Outside, the scarecrow in the field stood sentinel, ragged and alone, its twisted wooden limbs silhouetted against the storm-dark sky. A symbol once of protection now seemed a mockery of her own neglected heritage, tattered, exposed, forgotten. Silence enveloped the farmhouse like a shroud, broken only by the sporadic creaks and sighs of settling wood. Sarah's breath came in shallow bursts, her body tense as she fought the urge to collapse into the abyss of despair. A sudden, sharp crack sounded from the barn, a sound so ordinary yet so piercing in the heavy stillness. Sarah's gaze snapped toward the shadowed doorway, heart pounding hard against ribs heavy with grief and fear. She rose unsteadily, footsteps soft against the cold floor, moving toward the source of the noise. The air was thick with the scent of damp hay and aged timber, mingled with something darker and older, a hint of forgotten sorrow lurking beneath the dust. Her fingers reached out, trembling, to brush against a torn photograph pinned to a weathered beam, a portrait divided in half, its jagged edges exposing a rift long hidden but now painfully visible. The fractured image mirrored the shattered pieces of her own identity and family she struggled to reassemble. For a moment, time slowed, the house holding its breath alongside her. The weight of betrayal pressed in, suffocating and absolute. She dipped her head, blue eyes closing briefly as tears traced cold tracks down cheeks kissed by the damp chill of the room. The journal, her only companion, rested on the floor, its pages fluttering as the wind found new cracks in the aging walls. Outside the window, the rain intensified, blurring the steadfast silhouette of the scarecrow as it swayed weakly against the storm. It seemed less like a guardian now and more a testament to fragility endured. In the depths of darkness and rain, Sarah felt the steady unraveling of all she held dear, the steady erosion of hope, trust, and belonging. The farm, the bloodline, the memories all dissolving into shadows. And yet, beneath the breaking dawn of her despair, a faint ember flickered, hidden beneath layers of sorrow, and ember that would beckon her forward, through the night, toward dawn. The dusk deepened into a velvet dusk, swallowing the farmstead whole under a cloak of creeping shadows. A cold wind whispered through the skeletal branches of ancient trees, their barren limbs swaying with a hollow creak that echoed against the vast emptiness. Sarah stood by the broken fence line, the weight of the evening's silence pressing down like gravity, a suffocating heaviness that clung to her skin, numbing her senses and dragging her spirit toward desolation. Her breath formed frosted clouds that dissipated quickly into the chilled air, ephemeral like her faltering hope. The vast fields stretched outward, now a sea of darkness, merging with the cloud-heavy sky to blur the world into indistinct shapes. Somewhere in the distance, the faint rustle of dry leaves stirred a whispered reminder of loneliness rooted deep in the land itself. Sarah's silhouette was stark and solitary against the horizon. The coarse fabric of her flannel shirt hung loose, dirt speckled her jeans from restless wandering. Her hands, roughened and trembling, clutched a folded piece of aged paper, an unsent letter she had found tucked deep within the folds of the journal. The fragile script blurred as tears stained the ink, and she stared down at it as though it might offer an answer that remained painfully distant. Behind her, the abandoned barn loomed, a fractured monument to forgotten times. Its door gaped ajar, revealing the shadows within, where motes of dust floated aimlessly, caught in the faintest glimmers of twilight. The barn's very presence loomed like some accusatory witness to her unraveling world, a symbol of neglected ties that had once held family and history intact. A sudden movement to her left caught her eye. The weathered scarecrow, with its faded, threadbare shirt and cracked wooden frame, stood stoic in the fading light, an eerie sentinel shrouded in silence. Its empty eyes, once meant to ward off harm, now seemed hollow and vacant, mirroring the emptiness blooming inside Sarah. A long pause lingered. The silence thickened to near suffocation. Her lips parted, barely a whisper. "Maybe I don't belong here." The words dissolved into the cold breeze, unanswered. She turned her back to the barn and the scarecrow, her steps slow and heavy, dragging her deeper into the shadows beneath the towering trees. The earth was hard beneath her boots, unyielding and indifferent. Every footfall echoed a fractured rhythm, a testament to her fractured soul. The night deepened, enfolding her in its relentless embrace. Even the stars, distant and cold, failed to pierce the shroud of despair that tethered her heart. Reaching the edge of the field, Sarah sat on a fallen log, her body collapsing inward. Arms wrapped tight around herself, she bowed her head, the chill seeping through to her bones. In the fragile flicker of moonlight, the folded letter slipped silently from her fingers, fluttering slowly downward to rest amid the dead grasses, a fragile symbol of unspoken forgiveness and the weight of unshed tears. Time dissolved into an endless void. The sounds of the living world retreated to ghostly whispers on the wind. Sarah's breath slowed, her form still and diminished, a solitary figure swallowed by sorrow and silence. The night held her there, suspended in a cavern of loss and stillness, as the farm exhaled long and low beneath the heavy sky, a world waiting, watching, and unbearably vast. At the threshold of surrender, all that remained was the fragile pause before the faintest stirrings of dawn. The dawn was a fragile thing that broke slowly over the farm, a muted glow seeping behind the gray veil of heavy clouds. Sarah stood by the edge of the weathered barn, its silhouette jagged against the pale light, the lingering night mist curling around her feet like the ghosts of memories she tried to hold at bay. The barn's bones creaked softly, a familiar, mournful sound that echoed the fractures in her heart. In her hands, the journal felt heavier today, its pages worn and fragile beneath her trembling fingers. She traced the lines of a letter unearthed just hours before, ink blurred and faded but unmistakably an invitation, a note penned with a hope she had thought long lost. A meeting point, a chance for clarity, for reconciliation whispered across time. Her breath caught as the wind stirred the tattered scarecrow in the adjacent field, its head lolling slightly on the crooked post. The figure seemed to bow in silent acknowledgement of the weight of this memento protector weathered by storms but still standing, still guarding the legacy she inherited. Shadows lifted fleetingly from Sarah's chest, fragile light threading through the dense fog inside her. She recalled the evenings spent poring over journals, the moments when secrets unfolded like delicate petals revealing hidden colors and textures, a painful beauty in every truth uncovered. The creak of hinges gently disturbed the silence. Turning slowly, Sarah faced the door where a letter, carefully folded and worn with age, lay propped against the frame. No words were spoken, none were needed. It was a sign, a summons, a tether. Stepping inside the house, she held the letter to her chest, the weight grounding her amidst the swirling doubts. The house felt alive now, as if the walls themselves exhaled with the promise of healing, trembling with the breath of stories still waiting to be told. She moved toward the window, gaze sweeping over the vast fields, where the sun's tentative fingers stretched across soil and sky, hinting at renewal. The distant silhouette of the barn, the flicker of the scarecrow against the softening skythe were symbols etched into her soul, reminders that beneath neglect lies a foundation unbroken, beneath silence a voice yet to speak. Her voice was barely a whisper, a fragile vow to the fading night: I will find the truth. I will carry the past forward, not as a weight but as a guide. A single star shimmered faintly beyond the breaking dawn, small but unwavering, a beacon in the dimming dark. Sarah's blue eyes remained fixed on the horizon, resolute despite the fragility. Though the path ahead was shrouded in uncertainty, the spark of hope had kindled anew. The old journal rested quietly beside her, its pages heavy with the promise of redemption, waiting patiently for the next chapter to be written. The farm exhaled softly with the morning breeze, a subtle lullaby of endurance and awakening. And in that quiet, the journey of healing had truly begun. The brittle dawn unfurled with hesitant light, casting a soft glow over the weathered farmhouse and the sprawling patchwork of fields stretching beyond like a muted sea. The horizon, once obscured by weary gray clouds, now softened into subtle hues of apricot and faint lavender, breathing gentle warmth into the cold bones of the earth. Sarah stood near the farmhouse window, her hands wrapped loosely around a steaming cup, the fragile heat seeping into her fingers, a quiet comfort against the cool morning air. Inside, the walls seemed less oppressive now, infused with a filtered golden light that danced languidly across worn furniture and dust-speckled air. The journal lay open on the kitchen table, its pages cradled by time and trembling with the weight of a history slowly unraveling. Sarah's pale blue eyes lingered on the faded lines, where ink traced stories of a man grappling with his own shadows, remorse, longing, the desperate hope for redemption. A gentle creak interrupted the fragile quiet, the old wooden floorboard beneath her. She stepped back, her gaze drawn outward to the fields waking under the tentative morning. The scarecrow stood silhouetted against the dawn, its tattered hat catching the light with a kind of grim dignity, a steadfast guardian in a world caught between decay and rebirth. Her breath slowed, heavy memories yielding to a fragile calm, each inhalation and exhalation a meditation, a quiet morning shifting slowly into a cautious resolve. The silence held a different kind of weightless suffocating, more patient, like the earth quietly preparing itself for spring. Sarah's eyes closed briefly, the wind curling softly through the open window, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and distant rain. It was a scent heavy with both endings and beginnings, as if the very air whispered forgiveness and the gentle promise of new chapters. Motion stirred beside Hera. Weathered photo, previously hidden beneath a stack of letters, caught the light. Unfolding it, Sarah saw a younger version of her grandfather smiling hesitantly beneath a wide-brimmed hat, surrounded by faces blurred in time. It was a small, luminous anchor to a man suddenly more human, less myth, bearing the dual burdens of his love and his failings. She whispered to the quiet room, voice fragile but steady, maybe there's a way to make peace, after all. Her gaze traveled back to the window, lingering on the slow unfurling of light over the deserted fields, the horizon breathing life into centuries of roots and soil. The barn's silhouette loomed in the distance, no longer solely a symbol of neglect but a beacon of possibility. The pages of the journal seemed to pulse with meaning now, a testament not just to secrets kept but to courage found in their facing. Sarah felt the stirrings of something long still, a thread of light weaving itself through the shadows of her heart. She glanced toward the worn scarecrow once more, its arms outstretched as if in quiet benediction. In that moment, beneath the softening sky, Sarah sensed that the journey ahead, though still daunting and uncertain, was no longer one she would undertake as a prisoner of her past. The world outside breathed slowly, shadows retreating beneath the tender glow of dawn, and Sarah closed the journal with a soft but resolute sigh. The path to healing had begun, a first step illuminated by the fragile light of understanding and the strength quietly rising within. As the farmhouse bathed in the warm hues of morning, a delicate peace settled between the cracked walls, weaving through the air like a whispered promise of renewal and hope. The evening sun draped the quiet town in a veil of deep amber and violet, shadows stretching long across cracked sidewalks and weather-beaten roofs. The small community center, a simple brick building adorned with peeling paint and faded banners, hummed with a muted intensity, an uneasy gathering teetering between confrontation and understanding. Sarah stood near the front, her fingers lightly clutching the aged journal, now a symbol of her resolve. The room was packed with familiar faces, neighbors who once exchanged polite smiles but whose eyes now shimmered with suspicion and old grievances. Some held arms crossed, others whispered behind bated breaths, the atmosphere thick with years of silence and unspoken judgments. Sarah took a measured breath, the familiar flicker of nerves igniting beneath calm control. Her deep blue eyes met the watchful gazes before her, faces that had cast stones in the dark, that had spoken in riddles and warnings, now waiting, some expectant, others wary. She spoke with quiet strength, voice steady but imbued with raw honesty. "I've come to stand not only for myself but for the truths we've all needed to face. My grandfather was a man flawed and fallible, yes, but silencing those stories only keeps us prisoners of the past." A murmur rippled through the crowd, some nods, some reluctant shifts in posture. A frail older woman leaned forward, eyes glistening with tears. "It's time," she whispered, voice trembling. "We've all carried our own ghosts. It's time for the light." The community meeting unfolded like a delicate dance, accusations tempered by empathy, bitterness softened by shared grief. Sarah listened as stories poured out, pain mingled with hope, ancient wounds exposed yet healing beneath the fragile shelter of collective will. As the night deepened, the once hostile room transformed into a sanctuary of stories, voices entwining with nods and quiet laughter. Sarah's courage sparked a shift not only within herself but in the hearts of those gathered, a fragile truce forming, rooted in acknowledgement and the desire for reconciliation. Outside, the weathered scarecrow stood silhouetted against a deepening indigo sky, its tattered form no longer a symbol of neglect but a steadfast guardian embracing the winds of change. Beneath its ragged arms, the earth seemed to pulse, a silent heartbeat echoing the renewed spirit within the town. Sarah stepped out into the night air, the cool breeze carrying the scent of pine and fresh earth. The stars twinkled overhead, their distant light weaving a tapestry of hope and healing. She felt the weight of the past loosen, replaced by a quiet strength burgeoning in her chest. As she gazed toward the farmhouse, windows aglow with warm light, a profound serenity settled over her, knowledge that the journey had shifted, that doors once closed were now opening. In the embrace of the night, with the haunting silhouette of the scarecrow watching over, Sarah understood that the path forward was still uncertain, but it was hers to walk, guided now by courage, truth, and a burgeoning sense of home. The sun poured molten gold across the horizon, igniting the endless fields and bathing the weathered farmhouse in a radiant light that seemed almost otherworldly. Shadows, long and deep, receded beneath the surge of dawn, giving way to warmth that seeped into every crack and crevice of the land Sarah now claimed. The air was thick with the scent of fresh earth and blossoming wildflowers, a fragrant promise whispered by the soft breeze that rustled through the reawakened trees. Sarah stood on the crest of a gentle hill, the journal clasped firmly in one hand, the other resting lightly against the rough bark of a tree planted mere weeks before, a living testament to beginning anew. Her tousled hair caught the sunlight, casting a halo of copper hues around her silhouette, while her deep blue eyes reflected the vast expanse of sky, clear and piercing, alive with unwavering purpose. The barn, once a shadowed relic of neglect, now cast a proud silhouette against the glowing sky, its timbers restored and strong, the scarred wood infused with the touch of loving hands. Nearby, the scarecrow stood sentinel, no longer tattered and forgotten but repaired and clothed anew, a quiet guardian symbolizing the bridge between past wounds and future hope. Around her, the earth breathed a slow, steady rhythm, as if the farm itself acknowledged the redemption unfolding within its bounds, a rhythm that echoed the beat of Sarah's steady heart. She closed her fingers around the journal, feeling the weight not as a burden but as a compass, a map guiding her through the labyrinth of family secrets, betrayal, and forgiveness. Every page bore the scars of pain and regret, yet also the indomitable spark of reconciliation and healing. Turning to face the gentle slope leading toward the town, Sarah's voice broke the morning silence, not with anger or bitterness but with calm conviction. "The past does not define us," she said softly, eyes bright with a hard-earned wisdom. "It teaches us, if we dare to listen." Behind her, footsteps stirred in the fresh grass, friends and neighbors drawn into the light of her courage and clarity. They gathered not as judges but as witnesses, sharing in the tender release forged through openness and understanding. As the first light kissed the landscape, Sarah reached out, hand extended in simple, unspoken forgiveness to an elder who stepped forward, a link between old grievances and the fragile threads of newfound trust. Their eyes met, and in that exchange, the weight of years collapsed quietly, replaced by a gentle acknowledgement, a mutual recognition of pain and the brave commitment to move beyond it. The camera drew back, revealing the entire farm basking in the golden glow of dawn. A soft breeze swept across the fields, setting wildflowers to sway and grasses to ripple like waves, carrying a scent of earth and rain, a scent of rebirth. Sarah lifted her gaze toward the horizon, steady and serene. Her voice, barely above a whisper, floated on the wind. "This is where healing begins." Surrounded by the soft chorus of the waking world and embraced by the enduring land she now called home, she stood poised at the threshold not only of a farm renewed but of a future crafted from courage, truth, and unwavering hope. The journey ahead was uncertain, yet no longer shrouded in fear but illuminated by the luminous light of transformation. The horizon was a canvas of whispered promise, streaked with amber and soft lavender as the sun settled into its tranquil arc. The old farm, now bathed in a warm, forgiving glow, stood as a testament to resilience, its silhouette peaceful against the vast, endless fields. Sarah moved slowly, her steps gentle and deliberate, each footfall a quiet affirmation of peace finally taking root. In her grasp, the small sapling felt surprisingly heavy, a fragile symbol of transformation. She brushed her fingertips along the rough bark, feeling the steady pulse beneath the quiet strength that had carried her through storms of doubt and grief, now anchoring her in hope. The earth beneath her was freshly tilled, the soil dark and tender, inviting new growth. She turned to face the spot where the old farmhouse had stood, its roots and memories woven into the very fabric of this land. Now, where shadows once clung, there was only light, and in that light, a sense of liberation. The sky shimmered with the slow fade of daylight, stars beginning to prick the velvet canvas above. The scarecrow, weathered and tattered, anchored in the gentle breeze, stood silently as a sentinel of her journey, a watcher not of darkness but of dawn. Sarah's gaze lingered on the horizon, her deep blue eyes softened with understanding. A gentle smile curved her lips, a quiet acceptance blossoming in her as she exhaled a breath she had been holding, an unspoken acknowledgement that her past was part of her but no longer a chain. She knelt briefly, planting the sapling into the fertile soil, her fingers closing around it as if cradling a gift. Her reflection shimmered in the delicate pond nearby, a woman reborn, her face calm, her spirit unshackled. The wind whispered through the tall grass, carrying a lullaby of renewal, a promise that growth, however slow, was inevitable. As darkness settled softly, the farm embraced the star-studded sky, the silence a hymn of futures untold yet embraced with unwavering trust. Sarah stood again, gazing at her newly planted tree, eyes shining with quiet resilience. In that tranquil moment, beneath the watchful stars and the gentle fade of daylight, she felt herself finally at peace, ready to nurture new roots, ready to build forward with hope in her heart and forgiveness in her soul. The sky beyond the farm was a canvas painted in hues of surrender and happy, an endless streak of amber and violet as the sun dipped toward the horizon. Sarah stood quietly in the fertile earth, her fingers delicately wrapping around the young sapling she had just planted in the freshly tilled soil. The act was simple, symbolic: to nurture new life from the remnants of old scars, a testament to healing and growth. The breeze brushed softly past her, stirring the leaves, carrying whispers of quiet redemption. Her eyes, once shadowed with doubt and despair, now shimmered with the gentle glow of acceptance. She took a slow breath, feeling the warmth of the fading sun seep into her skin, and in that warmth, she found the quiet strength to finally let go. Behind her, the old scarecrow, battered yet resilient, watched silently, a guardian symbol of protection and unacknowledged heritage. Its worn form, tattered and frayed, now stood as a testament not to neglect but to resilience, the unyielding perseverance of roots deep in the earth. Sarah's gaze drifted over the landscape, the fields stretching endlessly, whispering tales of long ago and ones yet to come. The throbbing pulse of her journey, trek through shadows, betrayal, and revelation, faded into calm, a lullaby of hope softly echoing in her heart. She ran her fingers lightly along the leaves of the new sapling, an unspoken vow sealing her journey of healing. The tears she had once shed for pain and loss now dried into quiet resolve, the wounds transformed into quiet wisdom. A solitary hawk soared high above, its wings cutting through the final rays of daylight, an emblem of soaring beyond the darkness, a reminder that growth often begins with letting go. The distant farmhouse glowed warmly in the twilight, a beacon of new beginnings. Sarah turned slowly, gazing at that familiar silhouette, the house once a symbol of neglect now reborn through her strength and patience. She lifted her face to the awakening sky, eyes shimmering with the promise of a future no longer haunted by the ghosts of the past but shaped by her own resolve. In that moment of silent celebration, she understood true healing is an ongoing process, a gentle unfolding like the dawn of a new day. The farm, the trees, and the horizon held their breath, witnessing her quiet victory, the gift of release and the unspoken promise that the future was hers to write. As the stars finally pierced the darkening sky and night cloaked the land, Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, imbibing the serenity. The gentle rustling of the wind became a hymn, a prayer for peace, renewal, and hope crafted in the silence of her heart. The horizon blazed with hues of amber and crimson as the sun dipped beneath the distant hills, casting a warm glow that transformed the farm into a sacred sanctuary of renewal. The old farmhouse, battered by time and neglect, now stood resilient, its skeletal frame bathed in gold, its windows shimmering like portals into her past and future. Sarah moved slowly toward the center of this quiet land, every step deliberate, as if treading on sacred ground she had finally reclaimed. In her hands, she held a small sapling, the symbol of new growth, its roots digging deep into the forgiving earth. Her fingers brushed tenderly along the rough bark, anchoring herself to the life she was choosing to nurture. The air around her was thick with the scent of damp soil and blooming wildflowers, a fragrant hymn to resilience and hope. Behind her, the weathered scarecrow stood sentinel once more, its ragged clothing fluttering softly in the gentle breeze. Its hollow eyes, once windows to neglect, now seemed to glimmer with a quiet pride, a testament to the strength of unacknowledged heritage, an enduring emblem of protection and the quiet power of roots buried deep. Sarah's gaze remained fixed on the horizon, where the sun's final glow softened the wild landscape into a tapestry of vibrant life. The vast fields stretched beyond, whispering stories of old wounds healing in silence and new beginnings unfurling beneath the slowly darkening sky. She knelt, gently placing the sapling into the prepared earth, her movements imbued with reverence and act of forgiveness, a seed planted in the soil of her own courage. Her fingertips traced the delicate leaves as she whispered a silent vow, "This is my salvation, my rebirth. I choose not to forget but to forgive." A flock of birds soared high overhead, their flight a ballet of freedom, tracing silent arcs across the expansive sky, a quiet affirmation that liberation begins within. The air hummed with the gentle symphony of life, the soft rustle of grasses, and the distant call of a lonely owl, all woven into a lullaby of hope. As darkness settled softly, a star appeared, faint yet persistent, casting its unwavering light across the land. The farm, bathed in the gentle glow of dusk, seemed to breathe with renewed purpose, its bones alive with the quiet strength of resilience. Sarah straightened up, her face softly illuminated by the dying light, eyes shimmering with the dawn of new possibilities. In that moment, beneath the vast, forgiving sky, she understood that peace was not the absence of scars but the gentle acceptance of them, stars shining brighter in the night's embrace. She took a deep, steadying breath and turned slowly towards the horizon. The salty scent of tears and hope mingled in the cool evening air, a testament that forgiveness and healing, though silent, are the most profound tales of resilience. The landscape stretched endlessly, a silent promise that her journey was truly at its beginning, painted in the vibrant, enduring colors of hope and love, her roots forever intertwined with the land, her heart forever open to the endless sky. What secrets would you uncover? Share your thoughts below.